Well, hello, Cornerstone Kids, and welcome to this week's video. Hope everybody is having a blessed week, and I want to make sure that all of you guys are taking the time today to love your mom and make her feel so special and loved on this wonderful Mother's Day. We're going to continue in our study on the life of Moses, and it has been awesome. Hope you guys are blessed. Love you guys. Enjoy the worship.
How you guys doing? I'm going to be singing a few songs for you guys, so feel free to sing along. We're going to be starting off with Amazing Grace. Next we're going to do Happy Day. lighthouse. Guys, I hope you had fun singing with me, and I miss you all. Bye.
Good morning, guys. It's great to see you all, at least in the spirit, and I hope and pray that we'll be able to get together in person really soon. But until that time, we've got a great portion of scripture to cover. I know those of you who've hung with me before, I say that about a lot of passages of scripture. It's all true, but this one perhaps even more so, because we're talking about Exodus chapters 1 through 11, better known as the 10 plagues. And so we get to see a huge swath of history played out. We see some super strong characters like Moses, and we get him from birth all the way until he's a very old man. And we get to see other strong characters like Pharaoh and just his stubbornness and his pride and his hubris. it's a fantastic, not only is it a great portion of scripture, but from my point of view, it's great stories that you're going to be able to dive into. So I hope or recommend that you guys can sit down with your parents and read through maybe Exodus 1 through 11 sometime this week if you're doing like a nightly devotion. Beyond that, though, let's kind of just cover quickly kind of these 10 chapters and get a sense, because really at the end of the day, the message that we see out of this is that God is always showing mercy. He actually even shows mercy to Pharaoh, and I'll try and point that out in just a minute. But God had been working his plan, and Israel had kind of been in 400 years of captivity. And it was now time for God to kind of pull them out and move them. So getting right into chapter 1, it kind of gives an overview of what the situation is in Israel. Basically, a Pharaoh had, Joseph died, right? And then a Pharaoh came or became king that did not know Joseph, and the people of Israel multiplied to the point where the Egyptians started to become scared of them and basically enslaved them. So when we see the situation start to evolve, Israel is now in one of bondage and hard labor, and they're kind of crying out, and God hears them. So chapter 2, going right into it, we're going to see like Moses go from birth all the way till about 80 years old when he is confronting Pharaoh. So in chapter 2, Moses is born, and we don't get a lot of his childhood, but that he was brought up in the household of Pharaoh because God had divinely orchestrated for him to be brought up as a prince, and kind of became a man. We think he was maybe about 40 years old, and then he fled, right? Because he felt like, hey, I'm going to be the deliverer, right? But things didn't go exactly the way he wanted because it was trying to put his plan into play, not God's plan. So the rest of chapter 2, Moses killed the Egyptian. He finds out that it wasn't a secret, and he flees to Midian, right? Chapter 3, fantastic, if you've seen that DreamWorks film where Moses encounters God in the burning bush. It's a wonderful piece of cinema. But imagine having an encounter with God. And Moses, kind of grows up. He becomes an older man. He has kids. He gets married. And he's become content with just tending sheep in the life that he has. And now he's become humble. The Bible says that he was the humblest man on earth. And so he's become that man. So it's really interesting that way. So he encounters the burning bush. God says, I got a plan for you. You got to get going. And then chapter 4, Moses actually kind of gives some excuses. And he's like, hey, I can't speak. I'm not good. I can't do this, And God says like, hey, look, I'm with you. Stop your complaining. We're going to go back to Egypt and pull Israel out. Okay. He gets back, and in chapter 5, Moses has his first encounter with Pharaoh. Bottom line, it didn't go very well. Check it out and read it. And afterwards, the people are grumbling. They're all upset because Pharaoh says, these guys have so much time on their hand. I'm going to make their job even harder. And then chapter 6, God kind of says, hey, I'm renewing, he promised, he said, look, I promised to take you out. I'm going to take you out. All right, so which is great. Then we get into chapter 7. Moses meets with Pharaoh for the first time, or second time, I should say. And, we start seeing these, they throw down their rods, they become serpents, and Pharaoh has his guys do the same thing. And it's like, well, all this kind of weird stuff. And then the first plague, right? The first plague, I don't know how many of you remember. I admit that I don't always remember them all in the right order, but hopefully you guys do. I've got it written down here for you. First plague is what? Water into blood. And then chapter 8, we have frogs, lice, and flies. None of that's really great, but it's not disastrous per se, but kind of gross, right? Chapter 9 starts to separate things so that the livestock of Pharaoh, or the livestock of Egypt, the cows, the sheep, everything like that, those were kind of killed, but not the nation of Israel. And then up till this point, that's plague number 5. At the end of each of those, Pharaoh says, it says Pharaoh hardened his heart. So 5 times God is kind of saying, hey, you're going to give in. You're going to, this is what I want to do with my nation Israel. I'm going to pull them out. But Pharaoh chose and hardened his heart. And then in the 6th plague, which is boils, it says God hardened Pharaoh's heart. And for me, that just breaks my own heart. I never want to be that person where God says, okay, this is your decision. You really want this? Okay, fine. And God hardened his heart. And from that time, every time it says God hardened his heart. So remember what I said in the beginning, God shows even mercy to Pharaoh. God gives us all a chance to walk in his ways and to acknowledge, like, hey, we messed up, confess that sin and come back to him. In this case, Pharaoh just didn't do it to the point where God chose to harden his heart. So 6th plague is boils. 7th plague, the last of chapter 9, is hail. Then we have locusts, when it's big grasshoppers just getting in everything. That's kind of gross. And by this time, the nation of Egypt is kind of decimated. Then darkness. And I don't know about you, but like if you've ever been in true darkness, it is creepy. It doesn't feel good. You shouldn't be scared of the dark, but it's interesting when there's true and complete darkness for 3 days, which is what they experienced. That's pretty terrible. And then finally, the death of the firstborn in Exodus chapter 11, at which point Pharaoh says, hey, everything you said, fine, take them, go, and they're out. So again, just to kind of wrap up, God's always showing mercy, even to Pharaoh. And he's showing mercy to us. Like, he doesn't judge us according to what we do and what we are, but he shows us mercy. And we should be responding to that and giving him the love and the joy that we have because we can be saved. So just to wrap up there, Israel had been in captivity for 400 years. Now God's going to be leading them out. All right, so God bless you guys. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again sometime soon.
Cornerstone Kidz family, we miss you.